If you look around us, we've got some specialty malts around here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think the first thing we probably do is go see the silo. All right, so here we are at the grain silo. This holds all our pale malt. In our beers, we use anywhere from 60 to 80% pale malt. This actually holds 50,000 pounds, and the reason why we hold 50,000 pounds in here because this is the bulk of our beer. And then from there, we'll add our specialty malts. So like I said, between 60 and 80% is pale, and then we have 10%, 5%, depending on what I'm making. We'll put different types of specialty malts in the beer. So.
Awesome. Yeah.
And it goes inside that mill room over there via the screw auger where the grain gets milled. All right, this is our mill, and basically we cannot use whole kernels in brewing because we need to convert the starch that's inside the barley into sugars. So there's a two-row mill here. The grain goes through the mill and it gets cracked open. When it does get cracked open, it looks like this, and we have husk material, and that white floury substance is the starch from the grain. So this husk material is very, very important to us later because this will actually form a filter bed in our lauter vessel, which will give us some nice clean wort. So we definitely want the husks to be intact, just like cracked open. We don't want to pulverize them, but then we want the starch in there as well. So that's what the mill does. And out of the back of the mill, there's another screw auger that brings it all the way over to the into the grist hopper over there, and that's where we'll go next. We'll go to the brew house.
Awesome.
Ain't much left in there. All right. The grain gets cracked through the mill, goes up the screw auger, and then it's held in that grist case up top over the lauter vessel. It sits in there, and when we're ready to mash in, we basically mix that grist with water into our lauter vessel. There's usually a stainless steel chute that connects both vessels, but we're cleaning it out right now because we just mashed out, and we're taking that grain, we're giving it to the farmer. So John up there is cleaning out our lauter vessel for the next brew. So after we do mash in, the grains sit with the water for approximately an hour. During that time, we do what's called vorloffing, where we take the sweet wort, which is initially cloudy, and we keep recirculating that. We put the cloudy wort on top of the mash bed, and where I explained to you before, those grains form our filter bed. So after about an hour, the wort runs nice and clear, and then we're ready to transfer it into the kettle. It takes about 2 hours to go from the lauter vessel to the kettle, and we help it along by something that we call sparging, and we sprinkle 168-degree water over the top of the grain bed, and it pushes all the sweet wort over to the boiling vessel over here. That usually takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes to get all the wort over there. When we collect it in the boiling vessel or kettle, that's what we do. We boil the beer. It dries off volatiles. It concentrates your wort. It sterilizes the wort. So it does a couple different things to help you brew a better product. In this vessel here, in the boiling vessel, that's where we add our hops. If you guys remember, we weighed out some hops earlier on in the process. For this particular pumpkin beer, we're only going to add at 60 minutes and 30 minutes. The boil itself is 90 minutes long, and we're going to use a 60-minute addition and a 30-minute addition. After the boil, this vessel behind me is called the whirlpool, and that's basically exactly what it is. The wort gets pumped into the whirlpool, and it spins around. And the reason why it does that is because we have proteins and trub and hot particles that collect in the middle of that vessel, and we really don't want all that stuff going over to the fermentation vessel. We want it to stay behind in this vessel. So it collects in the center, and we run all the sweet wort out into the fermentation vessel. That blue device behind me as well, that's called a heat exchanger, and basically that brings the beer down from 212 degrees to about 52 degrees for the lager that we're going to do today, or about 66 degrees for ales. We also inject oxygen on the way over to the fermentation vessel because the yeast needs oxygen to absorb the sugar or the nutrients in the sugar to produce CO2 and alcohol. So that's it on the hot side. We've got a lauter vessel, we've got a boiling kettle, we've got a whirlpool, heat exchanger, push oxygen in it, and we go into the fermentation area. So we'll take you that way right now.
Awesome.
Awesome. That is awesome. Fermentation. This is our fermentation cellar. This is where fermentation happens. So today, when we send our sweet wort over to fermentation, it'll have lager yeast in the fermentation vessel, and we'll pump it into the vessel. And hopefully by tomorrow when I come in, the fermentation will begin. And for this beer, it's probably going to take about 2 weeks to ferment out. Our ales here take about a week, 5 to 6, 7 days. And what's really interesting about the lagers, we like to age them a little bit more as well. So after 2 weeks in fermentation, we'll start bringing the temperature down to drop the yeast out of suspension and just let it sit in lager and just mellow into a beautiful beer.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to try it. Yeah.
Behind me we have Bob. He's our cellar guru. He's actually finishing up a filtration. That is after fermentation and aging, we go to filtration. Behind him is a diatomaceous earth filter, and the yeast and protein and chill haze runs through that. Gets relatively clear, and then we go through this pad filter. It's more of a polish filter to get that beer really, really clear and bright. You know, we want it to be nice and bright and attractive. And then we send it on to the bright tanks, where we'll go to next. And the bright tanks are basically big giant kegs. That's where we carbonate the beer. If it needs some artificial carbonation, you know, we put a CO2 stone in there and bump up the CO2. So it's held in that vessel, and then bottle or keg. So we will go over there now.
So Spike, I noticed you got some new tanks about to come online back here. So
we do. We
some
just got
expansion here at Terrapin.
Yeah, we just got 8 new fermenters. This one is actually empty. We're actually still hooking this one up. This is our newest tank. And then we've got, this one's 100 barrels. We got a 50 barrel, 75 barrel, and 150 barrel. As I said earlier, in fermentation, these are basically big kegs. So beer is ready to go, ready to be packaged into kegs and bottles. So we have a bottling line behind us over here, where we bottled some Sunray today, and went very, very smoothly, which we like to see. A bottling line does about 60 to 70 bottles a minute. It's not that fast, it's not that slow, it does a good job. And then over on the other side is where we have, where we clean our kegs, and then we actually fill our kegs in this area here. We have what we call an octopus, and we fill kegs 8 at a time. So this is basically the packaging side of the brewery. So
very important side.
Right. And then you guys hopefully go out and buy kegs and bottles of our product, and the end consumer is you. So enjoy.
So this is where we finish up the tour?
Yep.
At the bar.
Of course, why not?
Absolutely, yeah.
After all that walking around and sweating, we needed a few beers.
So you guys do regular tours here?
We do, yeah. We give tours every Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 5:30 to 7:30. It's great. It's basically what I walked you through, maybe even a little question and answer if you got a big group that's, you know, they want to ask questions. We love it. So, yep, and we usually have live music every night here as well on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We usually get about a couple hundred people out here. It's a great time, and it's nice for people to come out and sample what we do here, because, you know, not everything that we serve here is out in the market. So when you come by, you might get a cask, you might get a vintage Monster Beer Tour beer that comes out of here, or something special. So it's nice when people show up and get pleasantly surprised by the beers that we have on tap.
That's an incentive to come down to
Terrapin and
check it out.
Yep.
So.